In this video, we will discuss why Filipino people are happy and relaxed, while Chinese people are frightened and intense. We will demonstrate that the reason Chinese people appear frightened and intense is that the Chinese languages contain high concentration of alarm sounds in them. And these alarm sounds give the Chinese societies drive and motivation, allowing them to outcompete the Filipinos in their own country. An interesting question that arises is, why are Chinese languages such as Mandarin, Cantonese, and Hokkien alarm languages, which increase fear and motivation in the Chinese people? On the other hand, the question is, why are the Filipino languages such as Tagalog or Cebuano not alarm languages? And why the Filipino languages do not increase fear and drive in the Filipinos? And as a result, without this restriction of fear, as is the case with Chinese, Filipino appear more relaxed and happy and are highly expressive with music and dance.
Pasak ng presensya ng wikang Filipino sa akademya bilang isang lehitimong wika ng pananaliksik at gawaing intelektual.
So let's have a look at alarm sounds in nature, and then let's compare these alarm sounds to the alarm sounds found in the Chinese languages. The first example is an alarm or distress call produced by a magpie bird. Next, we have a distress call or alarm sound produced by a rat. The next example of a distress call or alarm call is that of a koala. And the final example is that of a cottontail rabbit. We can see that the distress or alarm sounds have a lot of similarity to that of a human cry or scream. And here is an example of a human scream. When listening to or when producing distress or alarm calls, we become somewhat distressed or alarmed ourselves. In fact, alarm or distress calls automatically prepare us for fight or flight, where a person or animal becomes more alert, focused, and attentive to the environment. Here we have an example of such behavior in a deer, where it's listening to distress calls, and you can see how its head is raised so it can see better. Ears are also raised to focus on the sounds. Its eyes are widely open to maximize its vision, and its movements are nervous and very alert. So normal alarm or distress calls sound like ah, ee, ow, I, a, an. However, The less intense version of these distress or alarm calls are a, I, ow, I, a, an. Chinese Mandarin is perhaps the most intense alarm language in the world, where almost all words contain alarm sounds, and that is why China is such a major economic power. Let's take a look at some examples of Chinese words and the alarm components in these words. Here we have 3 Chinese Mandarin words. The first word is piao. Part of the word piao is yao, and that is the distress or alarm sound. Yao, 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 yao. The next Chinese word is shui, and part of shui is wei, wei, and that part is the alarm sound. Wei, 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 wei. The final word from Chinese Mandarin is chuan. Part of the word chuan is wan, and it is that part which is the distress or alarm sound. Wan, 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 wan. So the valve sounds with tones are alarm sounds. Here are the 4 tones of Mandarin Chinese.
Ah, 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 ah.
And here are some examples of words with these 4 tones.
Ma, 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 ma.
So the diphthongs are alarm sounds.
Ow, I, O, A, yeah, ya, wa, wo, yue.
And here is an example of a word with a diphthong in it.
Hao, hao.
And the triphthongs are also alarm sounds. And because they are very long, they are intense alarm sounds.
Yao, yo, wai, wei.
And here is an example of a word with a triphthong in it.
Biao, biao.
Also, vowels and diphthongs, followed by nasals, are all alarm sounds, as nasal sounds are acoustically valve-like sounds.
An, ang, en, yin, ying, yun, ong, yan, yang, wan, wang, wen, wong, yuan, yong.
And here are examples of words with nasal finals.
脸，脸，床，北京，中国。
Then you add tones to these compounds and you have a highly intense alarm language. As one can see, Chinese languages have almost all words with alarm or distress parts in them. It's hard to believe, but these biologically scary sounds are the driving force, the spirit, the energy of the Chinese people. It made the Chinese highly frightened and thus focused, attentive, and vigilant. Just like the deer in the following video is more focused, attentive, and alert to danger when listening to alarm calls. Filipino languages, on the other hand, have almost none of the alarm sounds as exist in Chinese Mandarin. It is a rather relaxed and melodic language where the syllables have a simple consonant followed by valve structure. All the vowels in Filipino languages are short and thus are not alarm sounds. And there are a number of diphthongs, but they are often pronounced as separate vowels and thus are not alarm sounds. There are some nasal finals which follow a valve. Even these are pronounced in relatively short manner in order not to disturb the simple consonant-valve rhythmic structure of the speech. Let's compare the phrase "nice to meet you" in Filipino to that of Mandarin and compare the alarm sounds concentration and intensity between these two languages. Note that letters marked in red are alarm sounds and letters marked in bold red are intense alarm sounds.
Ikinagagalak kong makilala ka. Nice to meet you.
很高兴见到您. I'm glad to see you.
I'm from the Philippines, but how come you speak Chinese? So there's always that ambiguity. Are you really Filipino or are you Chinese?
Good question. Is he a Filipino? He already studies harder than the Filipinos because he speaks an intensely alarm language at home.
Asian Americans study twice as many hours as the average American, right? They study about 15 hours a week. The average American studies about 7.
What he means by Asian countries here is countries which speak intense alarm languages such as Chinese, Korean, or Vietnamese.
For many Chinese American, Korean American, Vietnamese American families, a lot of this is very similar.
Just finished dinner. Now it's around 6:30. We're heading back to class for one more night class and 2 more self-study sessions. And then we'll end around 10:20. That's when we can go back to our dorms and sleep.
Harvard did not discriminate against Asian Americans. Asians would make up about 43% of Harvard's student body. Asian Americans tend to prioritize academic excellence.
Are you really Filipino or are you Chinese?
He also works harder and longer and is highly focused on making money and investing in comparison to the Filipinos, as he is more frightened because he speaks alarm language at home. So not only do the Chinese Filipinos outperform the Tagalog or Cebuano speaking Filipinos, but the intense alarm language speaking countries such as China, Korea, Japan, and Vietnam will outcompete the Philippines economically, producing cheaper and better products. Philippines government should gradually introduce alarm sounds into the Filipino languages. They should introduce long vowels, diphthongs, and nasal finals, such as the ones that exist in Mandarin Chinese. If the Philippines install such sounds, the country will quickly develop and become advanced and wealthy. and will be able to maintain its beautiful and expressive culture. If, on the other hand, Philippines want to become extremely hardworking and competitive with China and other Asian countries, then they need to further install tones so that the Filipino languages become tonal languages. If you would like to investigate this idea a little bit more closely, please check one of my book versions on the topic. Evolutionary Alarm Sounds Within Languages is the first version. Frighten the World into Prosperity is the second version. Motivate Poor Countries to Develop is the third version.